Here.
Director Jakes.
Here.
Director Michelle Lee.
Here.
Director Michael Eady.
Here.
Director Jakes, you do have a quorum.
First order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of September 11th, 2024. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Director Michelle Lee, seconded by Director Rosa Ortiz, that the committee meeting minutes from September 11th, 2024 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order of business is the finance report. Tom McComb. Morning, Tom.
All right. Good morning. Morning, directors.
Morning.
Tom McCone, Chief Financial Officer. Give me a second here while I share the presentation. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to present this month's finance report. So these are results for the month of August. So we'll start with revenues. You can see here at the top line, fair and pass revenue slightly under budget by about 400,000. Pass is performing better, fair box a little bit under budget. That's due to a little bit lower ridership than anticipated in the month of August. On the non-fare box side, that's positive to budget, driven primarily by investment returns, and then also the payment for charter service from the DNC for the charter service we provided. So overall for the month, 400,000 positive to budget, 3.1 million better than we were last year. For the year, you'll see similar trends and kind of how we're projecting to finish the year, with passes trending well above their budgeted level, offset by fare box coming in a little bit under budget, but overall fare and pass totals positive to budget by 3.3 million. Non-fare box revenue, again, positive to budget. That's driven a lot by that investment income and some of those additional charter revenues. So total, we're 7.6 million positive on the revenue side to budget and $21 million higher than we were last year. Moving over to the expenses side. We look here, we see that labor is negative to budget for the month. This is driven by the fact that we had additional overtime and unscheduled service to support the DNC. So that's offsetting some of those additional revenues that we had. So you'll see that service show up in the labor line. Material, fuel, both positive to budget. So good trends there. On the power side, basically flat to budget. Security services, again, negative to budget, kind of finishing the month. And we're going to finish the year kind of where we project at about 85 million spend for the year. That will be negative to budget at around this level on a monthly basis. Other expenses, positive to budget. A lot of that is timing around our contractual services. So overall on the expense side, $4 million positive to budget for the month. Looking at the year, we can see some of that variance on the labor side is coming down a little bit because of those August results. All the other trends hold here for the year. This is going to be consistent with our forecast of where we're going to finish for the year. So total operating expenses positive to budget by $72 million. On the public funding side, both sales tax and RET came in a little bit under budget, not notably so, but something that we'll continue to keep an eye on. Sales tax should recover. We're watching the real estate transfer tax to see if that lowered interest rates will kind of spur some transactions here at the end of the year, and see if we can see some recovery on the RET. For year to date, very close to budget, only off by less than 1% here. So strong sales tax, a little bit lower RET than anticipated. So what that means is we drew $32 million in federal relief funds. We still have $777.9 million remaining in those federal relief funds, sufficient to get us through this year, and we anticipate next year as well. On the commodity side, there hasn't been a change here. I will note that we will have an update on the fuel side. In September, we were able to lock in some additional fuel in September for 2026. And then on the power side, we're going to extend our supply contracts, and we'll get pricing on that on Friday. I'll report that pricing to the chairman and then obviously to the board as well after we make that purchase. That concludes the finance report. Any questions?
No questions.
No, I don't have any questions, Tom. Thank you.
Director Ja, any questions?
No questions, thanks, Tom.
Director Raquel?
No.
Director Ortiz?
No, thank you.
Director Lee?
No, thank you.
Director Eady?
No question.
Thank you.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
Thank you, Tom.
Great, thank you.
As we move to agenda item number 4, it is the review of an ordinance authorizing the use of capital revenue funds to meet the Chicago Transit Authority's local share commitment for the Red Line Extension Project in fiscal years 2030 and 31. Tom?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This ordinance will authorize the use and provide additional non-federal funds for the RLE project to demonstrate CTA's capacity to meet the additional contingency requirements of the FTA for the Red Line Extension project. These requirements must be met prior to the execution of the full funding grant agreement. The increase in project costs associated with the mainline design build contract and addressed by the CTA board in August prompted an update of the FTA's standard risk assessment model. FTA Circular C5200.1A FFGA guidance requires the independent assessment of the adequacy of a project sponsor's cost estimate and its contingencies and the reasonableness of the project schedule. In accordance with FTA's Oversight Procedure 40, Risk and Contingency Review, the FTA performed a risk refresh on the updated RLE project budget, which resulted in FTA requiring an additional $407 million contingency plus any associated finance charges. CTA is showing its commitment and capacity for these contingency requirements by adding project funds in fiscal year 2030 and 2031 through this ordinance and any future updates to the capital plan. I'm available for any questions.
We have to revisit this after, is this just a one-time authorization or is this something we have to revisit in 2031, 32?
Yeah, so what'll happen is this will update the project budget. And then when we update the capital plan for the years that contain 2030 and 2031, so next year when we have the 5-year capital plan, you'll revisit it then. You'll see those funds getting added to the 5-year capital plan in 2030 and then rolling into the next year. And as the project progresses, the need for that additional contingency should diminish, and so we would diminish those funds as needed as well.
Thank you, Tom.
Director Jean, any questions?
Good, thank you.
Director Cahill?
No questions.
Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay? Director Lee?
No, thank you.
Director Eady?
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions. You may proceed to agenda item number 5.
Agenda item 5 is the review of an ordinance authorizing a second amendment of a lease of property located at 350 North Orleans Street, Chicago. Bill Mooney.
Morning, Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer. Real estate staff recommends approval of an ordinance authorizing a second amendment of a lease for property located at 350 North Orleans Street. The CTA currently leases from BRE River North Point Owner, LLC, approximately 20,823 square feet of space at 350 North Orleans Street for the use as a data center facility. CTA has been leasing this space since 1991, and the current lease is set to expire on December 31st, 2024. Staff has negotiated an amendment to the current lease at an annual gross rent of $624,690 per year, or $30 per square foot, with 2% annual escalations for a term of 5 years and 5 months, with one option to extend for an additional 5 years. CTA will be required to pay an increase in its share of operating expenses in excess of the base year. Additionally, CTA will receive 5 months of abated rent, or $260,288 in the first year of the lease, as well as the tenant improvement allowance of $624,690, which may be applied as a rent credit as well. I'll be happy to take any questions on this item.
And I'm trying to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Is this our property or we're leasing the property?
We're leasing properties.
Okay, since 1991, has anyone considered buying the property?
So it's the apparel center.
It's the who?
At the apparel center, next to the merchandise mart.
So I guess we can't.
We could make an attempt at it, certainly. We are a very small footprint of that building.
All right, I got you now.
Yeah, before we pursued a second amendment to this lease, we did do a reasonable search to data center space available in the market, whether or not there was shared space, because since we first occupied the space, the need for data centers has drastically evolved. We also weighed that against the cost of having to move our infrastructure, which is not insignificant. And when we were able to negotiate a favorable rent, so this is actually a decrease from the prior rent agreement, it was made more sense to stay in place.
But we can't afford it.
Yes, sir.
Got it. All right. All right. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, we'll take questions from other board members. Director Ja?
Questions, thanks.
Director Requejo? Director Ortiz?
Thankful that we were able to negotiate a lower lease, particularly with how office space is budgeted. Thank you.
Chairman Barclay,
No question.
Director Lee.
You answered what I was going to ask about the data center. Are there other data centers that we have that we can consolidate, or like any other ways of, being more conservative?
So I know Caroline's still in the room, but I would invite Caroline Gallagher to talk about this. So we do have multiple, our network is built to be redundant. And so that helps us self-heal in issues and events. And so we tend to have multiple servers operating out of multiple locations that allow us to backfeed across our network. As we pursue our control center upgrade out on the west side that we're doing, our training control center project you guys are all familiar with, that does include a data center with it. So our existing control center does have a data center with it, and that actually does include some upgrades, which does allow us to make our network even stronger and more robust. But it also does potentially allow us to, tighten down some of the square footage. One of the biggest challenges, and again, I called you up and haven't let you talk, is since we first entered into these arrangements in the 90s, or built this building in 2004, which has a data center, and built the control center in 95, the need for servers has gone up exponentially, I would guess.
It occurs to me this is prime real estate, and having a data center in, a prime real estate area doesn't seem to make sense, but maybe you can elaborate, I guess.
Well, a part of it is looking at, as Bill explained really well, the redundancy.
Sure.
But we are looking at a cloud strategy and how to optimize, our data centers and potentially distribute them even further, because, we do not want all our data centers in one geographical location, right? That would not be good.
Sure.
So we are exploring a strategy to do that. And, but for the meantime, as Bill really well explained, moving all our infrastructure will be like a 2 to 5 year potentially project, right? It's not something we can do overnight, because we have to be very careful that we don't bring any systems down as we're doing that move. So it's going to take a while, and that's why we're entering into this space.
But just one other question.
No, it's a really good question. Thank you.
No further questions.
Director Eady.
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
Our next agenda item
Director
is,
Jakes,
I'm
may
sorry.
we place this item on the omnibus?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Now I believe to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that this ordinance be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja? Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes. Director Jakes, we might want to also place the ordinance from agenda item number 4 on the omnibus.
May I now have leave to place agenda item 4 on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the ordinance concerning the CTA authorities local share commitment for the Red Line Extension Project be placed on the omnibus. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, we may now proceed to agenda item number 6.
Agenda item 6 is the review of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation, Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning for the I-290 Blue Line Corridor Project. Bill.
Once again, Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer, and I'm joined by
Mayor Bader, Vice President of Strategy and Innovation.
staff recommends approval of an ordinance to authorize an intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation and Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, the I-290 Blue Line Corridor Project. In order to successfully and efficiently leverage the reconstruction of CTA's Blue Line Forest Park branch and IDOT's I-290 interstate, CTA, IDOT, and CMAP are partnering to address the safety, mobility, and condition of the corridor. Parties signed a joint statement of understanding in December of 2023, setting the program goals, responsibilities, and the creation of a corridor development office. The CDO will operate as a nucleus and coordinator for the corridor program to create and implement a unified program vision and support execution of that vision. The parties wish to enter into an agreement to document the responsibilities of each of the entity and agree to implement all applicable parameters. The agreement identifies CTA and IDOT as program leaders and includes a governance structure for the corridor program. Initial term of the agreement is 36 months with 2 one-year options. CMAP will be solely responsible for the execution and delivery of the CDO contract, while CTA will support the oversight and compliance of the DBE participation of this contract. I'll be happy to answer any questions on this item.
No questions, Bill. Thank you.
Director Ja, any questions?
I'm good, thanks.
Director Raquejo?
So recently we've had some conflicts with IDOT in terms of how they prioritize or not transit. And I'm thinking Lakeshore Drive redevelopment and the pushback to add a bus lane into that massive project that's still in the works has been not the best relationship, I would say, between IDOT and other agencies in the city, including CPA. How are we ensuring that this project is collaborative, this project prioritizes transit? And what are the roles of the three main agencies here to ensure that we reset the relationship and that we start from a place of collaboration with each other and understanding that transit in this corridor has to be a priority?
I think it's a great question, Director, and I would say that the Corridor Development Office itself is part of that's reset in that partnership. So historically, we have gone off and pursued our own opportunities or tried to work with IDOT in partnerships and maybe not always sat on equal footing in those relationships. We had gone after a series of grants with IDOT, and while they were the submitting party, they were the leads, we certainly didn't feel always as strongly seated at the table. This is an equitable partnership. So the governance structure here has two votes. It's fundamentally the IDOT Secretary and President Carter as the deciding bodies on kind of anything this governance body would pursue. So we have an equal seat at the table with IDOT, where oftentimes those relationships may be something we're having to broker with differently. I think IDOT is seeing their role in transit changing. I think if you hear the Secretary speak, he's very thoughtful about this corridor and how important transit plays in it. And he really saw an opportunity to restart that relationship. He's been a huge proponent of having us at the table. You know, last summer we did a series of tours. I know Director Lee joined us on a couple of these with the FHWA administrator, with the FTA administrator. So even though we were talking to the highways, right, we were at the table in that conversation. He helped bring us to the table, and President Carter led a lot of that, and we talked about that. This vision really is about a partnership. And the whole purpose here is it's built upon kind of the idea behind a GREAT program, where you have complex problems that require multiple parties engaged to agree to things and look at the greatest opportunity, and oftentimes look at the opportunity cost of putting aside those other opportunities. And so having our regional planning agency, CMAP, at the table to help steward that for us as a partnership allows us to kind of look at a multi-layered approach to chasing funding. There'll be opportunities that we can chase a piece of funding that's very specific to transit and will gain benefit, and maybe we adjust our scope a little bit and gives them a little something. And similarly, they have done similar things where we went after those mega projects, which we would not have been eligible for without the IDOT partnership. And you know, as part of this kind of gesture to see this as a holistic corridor, you know, they brought us to the table in those partnerships. And not only did we go after it once, we're unsuccessful, they were willing to put us at the table again for a second attempt. And so I think there is in this corridor, especially, an overwhelming amount of support. I will say that the legislative leaders see this as a key corridor and see transit as a key entity of it, and they don't like having a conversation about the corridor without transit at the table.
Appreciate hearing positive movement in the relationship. And you're saying that the power is shared, decision-making power is shared between IDOT and CTA at the top of the structure.
Yes, sir.
What happens if there's a conflict and the two parties are not in agreement on something? Is there a place for CMAP, or is there a mechanism in the IGA to resolve those conflicts?
So I mean, CMAP is there to help usher, I'll say, as a mediator in that relationship and stuff, but I have great confidence in our leaders that they can come to agreeable resolution for everybody. You know, this doesn't preclude us from pursuing any of the work we pursue, investment in our transit assets. You'll be hearing, and, you know, we talked a little bit about briefings, our projects to bring all station accessibility to Pulaski Station, right? That is something that we're pursuing as a part of our own program. We're feeding that information up to the general kind of CDO office. We're still pursuing track jobs day in, day out. I mean, we have $111 million committed in reconnecting community grant to go do track between Kedzie and Pulaski. So our interests are still our interests. This is really about the high level programmatic corridor vision. It's getting the message kind of unified, that it is a corridor and we are in it together. So.
And finally, I'm not familiar with this consultant that is being funded to support all the work. I do like the fact that there is a significant portion that is DBE in the contract in line with what we do as an agency. How will the voice of community members, advocates, and others be incorporated in the whole decision-making around this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So the consultant that is the lead on this, CDM Smith, actually does a ton of work for us. They are on our general engineering contract. They are on our general planning contract. They are part of our program management office for Red Line Extension. So, I mean, they do a significant amount of work for us in the region, especially a lot of planning and early design work. The governance structure for it has the executive level, so the secretary and the president kind of is the decision makers. Then there's a subset management committee, which is supporting agencies, of which we sit on that management committee. IDOT has, so the working folks sit on that committee, and the goal of that committee is to grind out the process, right, and make recommendations to the executive level folks. CDOT sits at that table, RTA sits at that table, the tollway sits at that table, because there's a conversation about open tolling, right? Where does tolling play in financing a corridor development right here? And then there is also an advocacy committee that does get into the local government structures, so the wards, the commissioners, the state representatives, community groups. So there is actually a coalition that is grouped. I'm sure you're familiar with the I-290 coalition. So they're part of that advocacy group. And so they actually interface with that management committee. They bring forward their opinions and thoughts about those opportunities. So.
And they're incorporated in the org chart for that.
Yeah. Yes, sir. And if you haven't seen that, I'm glad to share that with you. So.
The only thing that I would add is that the process isn't starting from a position of nothing's happening in this corridor. We're also in a discovery phase with CDM Smith where they're looking at all of the existing plans, both recent and about to initiate for certain elements of the corridor, whether that's plans that CDOT's leading around activation in the Garfield Park area. And so I think there's also a desire to make sure that we're going and looking at where has the community been participating and sharing their ideas for the corridor to date and starting from that position of what people would like to see.
Thanks.
Director Ortiz.
Thank you. I second all the comments Director Requejo shared. In addition, I think this is an incredible opportunity that we have that maybe was originally designed for, but equitable transit and I'm sure will play a big role in just bridging the communities into the station and having some overall guidelines and more specific guidelines across all of the different stations, I think will be really important for it to actually be more connected to the communities that it serves.
I agree with you 100%, Director. And one of the conversations that has been brewing kind of around this, there's an old concept, cap the Ike, right? And adding green space and reconnecting those communities. Some of that's being revisited, especially in the corridors where our stations are access points. Can you make them, for lack of a better, can you give them better curb appeal, right? Can we make those conditions as you enter and cross those between the two sides of the Eisenhower better and more interactive? How do you work in bike, pedestrian, divvy, all those aspects, mid-block crossings and things like that? So that's all on the table and it's a big issue, important part of this conversation.
Thank you.
Chairman Barclay. Director Lee.
No questions. Excited to see it move forward.
Director Eady. Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this on this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that this ordinance be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja. Director Requejo.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director may now proceed to agenda item number 7.
Item 7 is the review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of blanket railroad protective liability insurance for policy year November 1, 2024 through October 31st, 2025. Sisavon.
Good morning, Director. Sisavon Baker from the Legal Department. We are coming before the board for approval of our blanket railroad protective insurance policy. This is an annual policy that the CTA has had in place for 15 years. And this ordinance is for the renewal term November 1st, 2024 through October 31st, 2025. This blanket policy covers all CTA contractors and certain non-contractors who perform work within 50 feet of the CTA railroad right of way. The CTA enrolls these businesses in the program and prorates the costs of the insurance across the construction projects that the CTA is not out of pocket for the cost of the insurance. Our insurance broker and DBE Paradigm again marketed the renewal of this annual policy to the insurance market, and the incumbent insurer, Aspen Specialty Insurance, offered the best price for renewal. The rates have increased slightly, an additional 1 penny per $100 of construction from the expiring policy. Our initial base cash deposit is $14,419 with taxes and fees, and we are requesting a not to exceed amount of $800,000 for the projected premium, which is primarily based on the projected construction forecast costs for this upcoming year. It's going to be, we projected $97 million for 8 of our 10 projects. We believe Aspen will provide excellent service and responsiveness, and we recommend renewal with this carrier. I am happy to answer any questions.
I have no questions, sister.
Director Ja, any questions? Director Raquel?
Questions?
Director Ortiz?
None, thank you.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Lee? Director Eady?
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that this ordinance be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee? Director E?
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 8.
Agenda item 8 is the review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of cybersecurity insurance coverage for policy year November 1, 2024 through October 31st, 2025. This is fine.
Thank you, Director. We are coming before the board on the renewal of our cyber insurance policy. This is an annual policy that is renewed every year, and the term of this policy will begin, as indicated, November 2024 until October 2025. Our insurance broker, Alliant and DBE Paradigm, marketed this coverage to the insurance market and approached numerous 11 insurance companies for competitive proposals. We recommend proceeding with the incumbent insurer, AmTrust, for a $5 million policy, which provides coverage for cyber extortion, data recovery, business interruption, and more. Our deductible is still at $1 million, and our base premium will be approximately $275,000 before taxes. This insurance policy continues to provide a number of protections for the CTA-related cyber breaches or intrusions of CTA's computers and network, as well as cyber extortion. I recommend renewal of this policy with AmTrust and am happy to answer any questions or concerns.
Savannah, has there been an increase from last year to this year?
Yes, we're asking for an increase from $2 million to $5 million. That is reflective of what's going on generally in the world with the high-profile hackings, but also the market has improved a little bit. We used to have $5 million policy back in 2019. And after the pandemic in 2020, coverage was less and we were paying significantly more to get that level of a $5 million coverage, but the pricing has come down or the coverage has come up a little bit. And so now is the time to bring this back up to $5 million.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Ja? Director Raquel?
No question.
Director Ortiz?
Further questions? Thank you.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Lee?
No questions, thanks.
Director Eady?
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja? Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, we may now proceed to agenda item number 9.
Agenda item 9 is the review of an ordinance authorizing pilot program agreements with Global Display Solutions, Inc. and Papercast North America for digital bus stop sign pilots under the CTA's Innovation Studio program. Kara.
Correct. Thank you. Good morning. Kara Bader, Vice President of Innovation here at the CTA. I'm presenting on an ordinance where staff is recommending to advance 2 of the first pilots under CTA's Innovation Studio program. The board approved the CTA Innovation Studio in late 2013, and the program was created to allow CTA to pilot solutions and new technologies for some of CTA's biggest challenges. Since the board approved the program, planning and innovation staff have been working collaboratively to develop problem statements, open the program publicly, and review pilot submissions that have been received from the private sector. 3 problem statements were selected for 2024 based on feedback from CTA riders and employees. The statements included safety. How can CTA automatically detect people or large objects on the track to enable swift intervention? Internal process improvement. How can CTA automatically monitor the condition of physical assets at bus stops or their use over time? And customer experience. How can CTA expand real-time arrival and alert signage to bus stops? And this is the area I'm presenting on today. Once the problem statements were identified, planning and innovation did outreach to the business community as well as technology incubators in partnership with CTA's DBE team to educate the private sector on the program and encourage submissions. CTA received 31 pilot submissions across all 3 problem statements from businesses in various sectors, those that have worked with us before as well as new. And many submissions proposed creative technology applications or innovative solutions to help solve these challenges. Staff from departments across the agency came together to evaluate the submissions and selected the proposals that will be moving forward to the pilot. Today, I'm here to seek approval of the board's approval of stipends for 2 companies selected to pilot their tools as a part of the customer experience problem statement. The 2 companies were selected by staff for are 1, GDS, a global signage manufacturer with expertise in large outdoor displays, and 2, Papercast, a supplier of solar and battery-powered displays and software to support information and other signs. We're seeking $55,000 in project stipends for each company for a total of $110,000 to cover the cost of hardware and a portion of the software for up to 20 digital signs to be tested across our system. The hardware will remain property of CTA after the pilot conclusion. As a part of the authorizing ordinance for Innovation Studio, Planning and Innovation must return to the board for approval of any pilots that have costs for stipends, regardless of the amount. Through the pilots with GDS and Papercast, CTA will be testing the deployment of signs throughout our network, and signs will be placed on each company, which have a variety of hardware features. They vary in their power source, screen size, the method of ADA access with touch button functionality, as well as other features that we'd like to get a sense of how they will work within our network. The digital signs will provide real-time bus arrival information as well as other bus service information, such as alerting when when the bus is undergoing a reroute. The products being tested will also have unique back-end interfaces, which will allow CTA to test different methods for maintaining our signs and displaying content on those signs. And CTA will be running both pilots simultaneously to allow us to compare the advantages of each solution, as well as compare their functionality, particularly in the cold weather. We'll be monitoring for customer satisfaction and feedback, as well as our staff ease of using the backend solutions. If the pilots are successful, CTA will move forward with a procurement process for a system-wide deployment of digital bus signs, leveraging the learnings of this pilot program. With the board approval of these stipends, our team will move forward with launching these digital signs expeditiously as the cold weather is coming, and we know that that's one of the most interesting times to measure the effectiveness of hardware. Please note that we will be coming to the board in future cycles for stipends for other pilots that are under review. I can now take any questions.
Who's doing our signage now?
We work with a variety of vendors that supply the sign hardware itself. So GDS actually has supplied some of our existing signs within the system, but CTA staff maintains the signs as well as does the content management for them.
So can you tell me if GDS is doing it now, then why are we looking at adding, between them and Papercast? I need to see what's the difference between what we're getting now. And I heard all of the details of what you're proposing to get, but is you really believe that this is going to cause an uptick in ridership and customer satisfaction?
So yeah, this is a great question. This pilot in particular is targeting our ability to display digital information at bus stops. And so CTA has approximately 10,000 bus stops. Only about 600 of them have a digital sign, and that's the signs that are on the shelters. So there are thousands of stops that don't display any real-time information, whether it's arrivals, reroutes, et cetera. And so this pilot is looking for the potential for us to identify a scalable solution that could potentially be deployed at thousands of stops. We're thinking about corners that maybe won't fit a shelter for certain reasons. Maybe it's not big enough. Maybe the conditions haven't been right. And so this is an opportunity to test out those solutions that go beyond the signage that we have today, and bring some of that rail-like experience to our bus stops.
And this will also, real-time tracker will be incorporated with this?
Exactly. So they will be at like an e-ink display. So if you have a Kindle or something similar, it's that type of display that could then display the real-time arrival information similar to the experience that we have at rail stations. And the reason why we've looked at two different vendors is they offer two different setups. Some are solar powered, some are battery powered. And so we're really trying to think if CTA goes this route, what would be sustainable and scalable on the level of, 1,000 stops, 2,000 stops, 3,000 stops, where that's potentially a lot of equipment out in the field.
The global display solutions get an advantage because they are already contracted with CTA?
No, they did not. Everyone's pilot submissions were reviewed independently. Papercast, the other submitter that's moving forward, they are a very prominent supplier of the displays themselves. And so we did outreach to companies that often work in transit. So we did see some familiar faces, but amongst the 31 proposals that we've received across all sectors, there's a wide mix of companies that often bid on transit programs versus new companies, starting out companies, people that are trying to take a product from one industry and bring it to another space. But the process that we undertook with staff as well as agency review was also reviewed by our chief internal auditor and assured that the appropriate procedures were followed.
And if this is approved, when are you looking to have this launched?
We look to be launching either in December or January, just depending on how quickly we can move through shipping and get the materials on site and determine the pilot locations. With the cold weather and particularly battery-powered hardware, we know that those months are going to be the most critical for understanding how the signs would perform and hold up.
Will you make that information public? So that way, that we'll know where to go look and where the public will know to go look.
Absolutely. We're working with staff now to look at deployment locations. We're looking at both geographic equity, high ridership, areas that don't have a sign. And since many of these are solar powered, areas of marginal light conditions to understand what we'll need to have in terms of reliable access. And then once those locations are identified, we'll definitely share those back with the board as well as the public.
Okay. And the last thing I would ask is that we pay particular attention to the south and west side.
Absolutely.
No further questions.
Director Shaw.
Thank you for all those questions. Is the pilot gonna run for 6 months? Is that right?
The pilot can run for up to a year. I think because we want to make sure that if this is something that's working, we can move expeditiously to a procurement. We'll definitely have about a 6-month check-in and move forward from there.
And have we done any analysis on scaling this program to go to production? What does that cost would look like depending on which solution you go to?
We've done some preliminary analysis. I don't have those figures off the top of my head, but I think that part of the first few months of this pilot stage will be understanding, if our internal goal is maybe to have this at 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 bus stops, is the reliability of this project going to make that an attainable number or not? And so we want to be able to recalibrate what a scaled solution looks like successfully based on how we see the product working in the market.
And can you also talk about the prioritization of this particular use case under the customer service? Like, where does it sit in your list of priority?
In terms of customer service priorities?
Yes.
We do see a lot of demand for our riders for real-time information. The way that the signs at rail stations have been scaled through the system over the last few years is a great example of that. And I think that one of the things that we've particularly focused on is making sure that not just rail riders get that experience in terms of hardware that makes it easy for you to understand the system, to provide real-time alerts on reroutes, for example. And so digital information and reliable information coming from CTA does really fall to the top in terms of things that our riders are asking us for in customer experience. And I think that this is a unique way for us to be pushing that rail-like experience to bus stops.
Last question. What's the feasibility of getting this rolled out everywhere? Because I'm assuming there are tons of bus stops that don't allow today to install like a physical device, correct?
Yeah, so I think the two configurations that we're testing are ones that can be mounted on an existing bus stop pole. And so in theory, we're testing a sign that could go on any pole. The power sources will be one of the factors that we're looking at because not every place is going to get sufficient sun exposure for a solar powered display. And that's why we're also going to look at the battery powered options. Those might have different cost implications though, as well as maintenance implications if we're relying on a battery. And so that is why this pilot will be helpful for us to understand, could it be feasible to put this at every bus stop or not? I think that we have reached out to our colleagues at the Department of Transportation to talk to them about the polls and what we'll be doing in terms of testing. And so part of that is understanding whether or not sort of literally every sign could have one of these digital signs in the future.
You're not anticipating any additional infrastructure builds to accommodate for this?
I think the ideal end state here is that this sign is on the existing sign that has our blade sign. And we're looking to understand, do our existing poles have that capability? Would we need to replace some of them? And then what's that trade-off depending on the product type?
Thank you.
Director Cahill.
No question, just wanted to double down on the special attention to make sure that the final map of locations includes the south and the west sides, and also locations where we'll be reaching out intentionally to people with disabilities and senior citizens. And then congrats on the launching of a new program, one that is much needed. And I share this also with Molly Pope. I would love to see more of this innovation, calls from innovation and engagements towards not only the business community, which is really important, but also the civic sector and the nonprofit community. So they can help us with their ideas, their innovations with some of the problems that we're dealing with today. Thanks.
Director Ortiz.
Thank you. I second all of the comments that have been shared so far. I want to stress how important it is that we are very much thinking about the kinds of resources and tools that we're putting in our rail system and investing and thinking through that for our bus system as well. We've heard consistently across all of the use of ridership in our buses being very reliable, consistent, and needed across our heavier years of the pandemic. And so I'm excited that we're prioritizing and thinking through our bus system in this particular project. I want to second the equity aspect of this work, right? Like in terms of where they're going to be located. In addition to the south and west side, northwest side is also really important. Southwest side are all really important locations as well. So locations that really need this kind of infrastructure, if you can please keep all of that in mind. I did share in our briefing that also a lot of these communities need Wi-Fi access. So if that is something that we can think through, if they can act as hotspots as well, I think that would be very welcomed and appreciated by all of the community residents who may not have that readily accessible Wi-Fi. And if it's digital, I anticipate putting that in different languages may also not be a heavy lift. And so just really thinking about where and how these information can be translated into many languages that are needed throughout our city. I think that'll be really helpful to really think through our audience, our customers. I think that's it. Thank you. Thanks.
Chairman Barclay.
I echo everything that I've heard so far.
I've got my own comment. First, congratulations. Because we talked about this for a while. And I remember when we engaged and we were talking about how much we were going to be spending for it. Of the $110,000 approximately that you've are asking us to approve for the two companies, how much are they actually spending?
Yeah, the project budget is predominantly just for materials purchasing. And so, we've worked with companies and other companies that we're talking to in the pilot process. The intent here is not to be billing hours for services, for people to viewing this as like we're selling you an off-the-shelf project. These pilots are largely at cost. And so it's going to materials. There's some labor related to, for example, training our staff to be able to do installation and maintenance, but otherwise, these are predominantly at-cost pilots.
Is the end result for them to, if it's successful, to come back and seek a contract with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a great part of this program, right? We're trying to develop and test whether or not there is an at-scale need for CTA to procure something. And their skin in the game is to say, yeah, this is how it's going to work. This is how you would optimize this is what you need to know in terms of a procurement. And then we hope that they want to come back and bid. And we want to see more bidders even beyond potentially these two suppliers.
And of the 31 applications that you received, how many were minority or disadvantaged business?
Yeah, we worked with our DBE team. We did not receive any applications from minority or disadvantaged businesses. Either they aren't registered or they don't know yet to register. I think one of the areas for us to focus and improve on this program is thinking about how we might be developing a pipeline that then when we go to maybe market a procurement, that we can make sure to target more DBEs. Or if we're bringing smaller businesses that are just starting out that may be a DBE, but they haven't gone through the paperwork, for example, that we're bringing them into the process of understanding what CTA procurement opportunities might be. So we didn't get any in this first cycle, but I think that that's sort of a challenge and area of growth for us in this program.
Yeah, I'd like to see some effort, directed in that area, because I think that there's probably a lot of talent that doesn't know, and this is still new. Understand, but just to turn on the innovation side,
And we get great support from the Office of Diversity in trying to make that effort a part of the program. I think that it sort of raises the bar for us next cycle to try to get more connection there.
Thank you.
Director Lee?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this program. I ride the bus all the time and would hate to, I hate waiting and not knowing when the bus is coming next. So that's great. How are we engaging the ADA Advisory Council, to make sure that their feedback is being heard? And then the second question is, how are we going to be gathering the customer feedback? I know you're, evaluating two different options and just relying on folks to give us feedback, or is there like a plan?
Yeah, so we're right at the beginning stage of thinking about pilot implementation. We've talked to the ADA Advisory Committee about a variety of wayfinding issues. And I think once we know that this pilot can go forward, we'll go back to them with the features that these two signage suppliers have, which is predominantly the touch to speak enunciator, and sort of get their feedback there. As well as incorporate that in terms of identifying locations where it would be important to have that feature. And then in terms of monitoring customer feedback, we'll likely leverage a lot of the channels that we already use, so we can think about probably deploying a targeted survey to riders that tap around the bus stops where we're installing these signs to get their feedback, as well as potentially just some in the field monitoring.
Director Edie?
Yes, I was very excited and impressed when I was reviewing this CTA Innovation Studio. And with the vastness of the system, and I see there's only 20 locations, what was the process in identifying where that measurement would be made throughout this entire system? Because as you've heard, there's needs, probably greater needs in certain pockets. What was the process in identifying, or has that been finalized, where these will actually be located, being only 20?
Correct. We haven't finalized the locations yet. I think some of the factors that we're looking at are Obviously, high ridership bus routes that often are rerouted for different reasons because they go through areas where lots of events are. We'll be looking at geographic equity heavily and looking at transfer points, particularly southwest, northwest, areas that are farther away from rail and areas where it's unlikely that a full-scale shelter would come in the future. So we don't yet have those lined up, but we'll definitely be looking at all those factors. I mean, 20 is not a lot, right? 10,000 bus stops, but we also understand we don't have an unlimited check with this program. So we wanted to be reasonable also in terms of the request. There's also the potential that we could install a sign for a few months and move it to other locations over the course of the year.
Yeah, that might be a very good idea to move it around if that is something that could be considered and if we can afford it.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that this ordinance be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja, Director Requejo.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, we may now proceed to agenda item number 10.
Our next order of business today is the review of contract numbers B1 and B2, contract awards for infrastructure. I have no questions, Georgette.
We will take questions from other members of the board. Director Ja, Director Requejo,
No questions.
Director Ortiz.
None.
Chairman Barclay,
No question.
Director Lee,
No question.
Director Eady,
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions. We may now proceed to contract number C1 through C2.
Our next order of business is the review of contracts numbers C1 through C2, contract awards for finance. No questions, Georgette.
Director Ja, any questions? Director Requejo, Director Ortiz, Chairman Barclay, Director Lee,
None.
Director Eady.
I just would be curious to know what was the process in identifying those 5 additional firms?
Director, for this procurement, what we did was we did letters of interest and qualifications. So we're not looking at price here, we're looking at your experience, right?
Okay.
So the 4 factors we looked at is the experiences and technical expertise that the company provides. So they give us, we ask them, what projects have you worked on similar to this? What other transit agencies and so forth? So they give us a list of that. We also ask them for their prior underwriting performance. So we can call the companies, how did they perform for you and so forth. We then, we question their knowledge of national, state, and transit debt market. So we asked them for their information, for their experience with that. And then finally, we asked for their understanding of the CTA's credit and financing issues. So that was all the information that we received. Our evaluators then looked at that information and scored them. So anyone who scored higher and, we accepted. There was one firm that just didn't have the knowledge of the transit debt markets, and they're not local, so they didn't have, maybe that's why they didn't have so much experience with CTA. So they were the only firm that didn't make it this time. Doesn't mean they can't come back. They might act as a sub for somewhere else or get a job with another transit agency or somewhat, in which case when they reapply for us, they would then have more experience in those areas.
And what is your ceiling? Because you had 38 already and then 5 more. What's the ceiling?
70%.
Got it. So you got a ways to go.
Right, so they didn't quite meet that, so.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions. You may now proceed to contract D1.
Our next order of business is the review of contract number D1, contract award for planning and innovation. No questions.
We'll take questions from other members of the board. Director Ja, Director Rakeo,
No questions.
Director Ortiz,
None.
Chairman Barclay,
No questions.
Director Lee,
None.
Director Eady. No. Director Jakes, there are no further questions. We may now proceed to contract G1.
Next order of business is the review of contract number F1, contract award for technology. No questions.
I'm sorry, that's G1, Director Jakes. My apologies.
G1,
Yes. Are there any questions from Director Ja? Director Rakejo? Director Pease?
None.
Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Lee? None. Director Eady?
No.
Director Jakes, we may now proceed to contracts H1 and H2.
next order of business is the review of contract number H1 and H2, contract awards for safety. No questions.
Director Ja, any questions? Director Rakejo?
So, one of the contracts is a $26 million contract for unarmed services, address security, in our transit lines. And, we had a pretty robust presentation recently on all the security measures that we are putting in place. There's been some progress in some areas. Last time that we met, I asked the president, how are we thinking more comprehensively security, and how can we build on the lessons that we have learned over this past few years to move above and beyond the binary of armed police and unarmed guards, and think about community engagement, ambassadors, physical structure around our stations, like lighting, things like that. And I'm curious as to how is the team thinking about perhaps building on the RTA summit that took place a few months ago, where a huge room of experts, community-based groups, elected officials, CPA, others came together to start the conversation on how we're thinking about this starting 2025 with a more, again, comprehensive, deeper plan for security that, again, includes these types of supports, but looks above and beyond those layers and things, again, about, enhance homelessness, housed citizen support, mental health crisis that take place, crisis response, ambassadors, etc.
Nancy Ellen Zussman, your Chief Safety and Security Officer. We are looking at all of those things globally. Today, we're coming just with the change order related to the guard contracts, but we are always holistically looking at, are there other things? Obviously, the Zero Eyes, that was a technology piece that we looked at. We're continuing to look at other technology. There's technology at Wrigley Field related to security, where you could have numbers of people coming in at the same time, not necessarily delaying riders, but other technology that's out there. We're looking to expand potentially the social service outreach contracts, some transit ambassador training for employees, some other tools. We're always looking at this in a global way. We're not just looking at it, the narrow scope of more guards and more police, but are there other things that we can do to address security and safety issues related to the riders and the employees?
Thank you. I'm curious particularly because I welcome, of course, technology is very important, and we have improved on that end. Technology is just one side of innovation. As you know, there's innovations that come more from the side of social innovation. Communities often know better than experts in security what works best in their particular location, etc. And I feel that we can do more engaging, again, community-based organizations, civic sector, in helping us figure out the safety issues that we have in our system. And the other thing that I think would be important to consider is it often feels a bit desolate in some stations. There's a lack of staff. So there's not a lot of human presence. And again, having police presence and unarmed guards presence is important. It's also important to think about how do we integrate some customer service that is friendly and is there like from a positive side of things, creating a sense that there are people around here. So that's the type of like comprehensive approach that I would love to see the team and others at CPA engage in, again, in partnership with RTA and others who are thinking above and beyond technology, armed forces and cameras, etc.
Well, and you're right. I mean, at the summit, they did talk about a lot of different sort of community-based solutions. And we are always expanding and looking at other ways that we can address these issues, not just the narrow scope of, as I said, more police and more guards. Because I agree. I mean, the chatbot too is a way for customers to report anonymously when they see issues. Obviously, it can't be responded to in the moment, but we see those from the security standpoint are the reports of issues that we should, chronic issues in particular, that we could address.
All right, so let me know how I can be helpful in reconstituting and reconnecting with that larger group of players.
Absolutely.
And what,
Director,
sorry. What I would add, Director, is also related to things we are announcing today with regards to our strategic plan, which is the first ever of its kind. And it's very much aimed at addressing the dynamic issues that exist in our system in a new way and thinking of new solutions. And that conversation is well suited for that as well.
Yeah, I appreciate the effort and to acknowledging that, bringing more people to our table when we need them is important, and opening up our organization to others is really important. So I appreciate everybody's effort here.
Director Ortiz.
Yeah, let's stick to this topic for a second and maybe we'll talk more about the strategic plan. So I just want to emphasize, and we talked about this at our briefing, just the importance of social innovation, right? I talked about how people is a great asset that we all have and that we can all tap into. I believe in people's good intentions and good spirits. And so really bringing that out of everyone, our team members, everyone who uses all of our stations and everyone that's engaged. So really thinking about how we engage people and think about people as assets, I think are really important. Creating safe and welcoming environments as well, I think are absolutely important. If I see someone with an arm, whether that's a police officer or someone else, that doesn't make me feel safer. It actually makes me feel like we're in a really dangerous place. And so really thinking about my background is in architecture, so thinking about the environment and how we're welcoming people and how we're thinking about things. So there might be live music. I know that makes a huge difference when I'm entering a station and someone's playing music or there's art. All of these different components are as critical as just thinking about technology and how we're, finding this or finding that out. To me, we invest the money in technology and it costs a lot. And I think we should really leverage what and how we work with people to actually address people issues as well. So concepts about the ambassador and partnerships, all of those continue to be critically important. And I know we've been sharing this for a while, so I appreciate the fact that you continue to look at, our team continues to look at these things, but it would be really helpful to know when and how we could implement these components because we're putting money in. And I think it'll be helpful for all of us to know exactly where and how these funds are going to be distributed and not just have, a fund and know that these things are being looked at. We still haven't seen them when we've been advocating for these a while. But just continue to also offer support, offer connections, offer networks, offer space and time to change these pieces. As we know, we talked about what are the priorities for all of us and ridership safety, it has definitely been at the top of mind for everyone. So thank you for all you're doing as well.
Well, first, thank you for a comprehensive briefing. But as I expressed during the briefing, this is the area of the authority that concerns me most at this time. If our riders don't feel safe, our customers don't feel safe, and many of our staff members have indicated that there's safety concerns that they have, then we're not going to get our ridership back up. And just pouring more money into security without seeing some real results in terms of change. I agree with the technology. I agree with the social service programs as well. But unarmed security guards, how effective are they? We've tested this out for a period of time. We need to know the degree of effectiveness that exists there. Additionally, you know, people want, and I take issue with my colleague, but when people see police, they have a greater sense of safety, as I perceive it. And so for me, it's simply, we don't see enough armed police officers on our trains. We don't have what New York has, where you see them. People tend to at least have a little bit more respect and seem to be a little bit more accountable when they do see authority. What we saw during the DNC was great. We saw police everywhere. And our customers deserve to have nothing less than what we had when visitors came to town. We should lay out the carpet for our customers who are loyal to us, who support us, who ride our system every day, and depend on us for having enough security to get them from point A to point B. It's not just throwing more money at the issue, particularly with unarmed security guards. I want to know the effectiveness of the unarmed security guards. And I want to know because if we're just spinning our wheels and just having 3 people to huddle up and not really do anything, then our customers aren't going to ride the system. And our employees who we owe a duty to, they got to get home to their families back and forth as well. We owe them that. So we need to see more police presence on our system, because the people who decide that they're going to disturb our system or commit crimes on our system, you know, maybe a social program is good for them, but maybe some of those are beyond that. Our customers deserve nothing but the best. And I'm going to be a strong advocate to make sure that that happens.
Well, and we are exploring, when I say all options, we are looking at how much would it cost for us to create our own police force and how long would it take? That is one of the options that we're looking at. We're looking at everything. Everything is really on the table. So, you know, we're adjusting the guard coverages. We've found that the canines are more effective as a team. So we're going to switch locations with the canines and reduce some of the unarmed guards. So we are continually looking at and getting feedback from employees and customers as to what works best.
So Kevin Ryan, Vice President of Security. So two points. Number one, this change order is not to keep on with the same old, same old. This is to get us through to the bid process to renew the security contract. I don't think it would be advisable to pull security out at this point. There is some intrinsic value to the unarmed guards. We've displayed some of the statistical information. It's not perfect. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think to pull it out without having a plan to backfill it would be inadvisable. So right now, this is to get us through the next bid process. We have several, as Nancy Ellen indicated, we have several strategies we're looking at. One being formation of a police force would be a long-term endeavor. There's several shorter-term endeavors we can do. And to Directors Ortiz and Recreo, to address your concerns, there's room at the table for both of these solutions. The police department does it with caps. It brings community police officers together. So yes, we need more law enforcement presence. Yes, we need more community presence and input. Currently, security, for what we are responsible for, we do attend community meetings. We do get input. We do listen to what's going on. So to that extent, we're trying to, as far as I can, I'm trying to address that portion of the issue and also bring it in. And Chairman, as you know, meet with the police department. They're very good partners with us. We bring all the issues that we see from our perspective to the department. And we're also looking at enhancing our security from a more robust enforcement end, so to speak, which would include, is we mentioned, not only a police force, but looking at bringing in off-duty or retired law enforcement experience into the system and increasing the use of the canines, which have proved more effective in more serious or problematic chronic locations. I hope that answers a little bit of your question.
Well, in part, we know we have some hot spots. And when we have issues on the red line to get from 22nd Street to 95th Street can be very risky at certain hours. Why don't we flood this with police and let's shut some of this activity down? It just seems to me that there's some practical things that we can do. I mean, I ride the trains, I see drug dealing on the train, smoking on the train. Nobody says anything. Nobody's there. It just seems to me that there are hot spots, Ms. Ryan, that we can basically focus on to shut some of this activity down. And I don't see that kind of strategy.
Well, to that end, over the last month, we have focused on the South Red Line. There's been 23 arrests made. The department also did conduct narcotic missions on the South Red Line. We're still focusing on that area. Also the North Red Line, because we kind of displaced some of the issues going on. We noticed the shift up north, so we did shift some resources there as well. So it's still ongoing. You're right. We know where the hotspots are and we're engaged in it.
Thank you.
Director Lee.
I'm not going to rehash all the comments.
Right.
I agree with everything that's been said, and safety is paramount. And exploring plans just isn't enough. Like, you have to come to us with solutions. You can't just say that we're looking at this and we're looking at that. Like, what are we doing? And, you know, I've seen drug use and it's scary, right? Like, safety affects everything. And so until you can come to us with solutions, I think we're going to be kind of in this circle of conversation that's not really getting anywhere.
Director Eve.
Certainly, I concur with all that's been said without being redundant. I agree.
Director Ortiz.
Yeah, just wanted to also second the idea of thinking about multiple approaches to this work. I also just want to point out that historically our systems haven't always been equitable and have often been biased, negatively affecting people of color. And so I am very much conscious of that. And that's why I'm very much looking at various options, particularly about our youth and our youth of color. And that's why I want to be really thoughtful about the kind of holistic approach that we're looking into, and not just penalizing youth and otherwise through other methods that we know haven't always been equitable or fair to our youth particularly. So I just want to call that out. I don't want to generalize, but I've also been in Mexico in really hard and dangerous areas where everyone is armed. That still hasn't felt comfortable for me. Again, this is personal. I've had those experiences. I'm just sharing where, I'm sharing sort of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, there's this, I get what you're saying, because on one hand, you want everybody to be safe. On the other hand, you have others who feel that there's over policing. But I know for the sake of the contract, when is the next bidding process?
So we're anticipating issuing an RFP for new unarmed guard contracts in the next month or two. So the current contract for Intercon in Monterey had a 3-year base, which was through April of 25. So we would start the procurement process probably in the next month or two and go out for, and we may include the flexibility of having armed guards as well as just unarmed guards, at least the flexibility in the bidding process. And the bidding process takes quite a bit of time. So the change order is really to get us through an opportunity for a new contract related to the unarmed. The K-9 contract, which is currently under an emergency contract, we've been going through the procurement process for a permanent contract for that, and I anticipate that coming to the board sometime in the probably the November board.
My last question, because I know we have to move on. In the conversation, as far as the unarmed guards are concerned, has there been any conversation with our employees who are there every day watching what's happening to see whether or not they're effective or not?
Yes. So the security department, starting actually in February, has started an outreach program to reach out to the CSAs and the CSRs to get feedback. And since February to now, they've had, I think, 1,465 contacts with individual employees to try and get feedback. What are you seeing? All the issues, not just the guards, but all the issues, and trying to address those issues. So yes, we are engaged. We're attending RAP sessions. We're trying to get feedback from employees as well.
Okay. I want to discuss this further. So at some point you.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. If there are no further questions. No, I don't need to put this on the omnibus.
No, Director Jakes, there are no further contracts.
No further contracts. All right. Since there are no further questions on the contracts, may I have leave to place the 8 contracts on the omnibus?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz to place the 8 contracts on the omnibus. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja?
It's a yes with a contingent. I very much agree with Director Lee. We had a very detailed discussion when we talked about budget. I would not be approving anything under security until we see a holistic plan of how we plan to invest this money, where the changes are coming from, and what are the outcomes that we are looking at. So if we are planning on coming back in November, I'd like the team to really create a communication plan on how that money is going to get spent. I don't want to get into the details of the briefing conversation, but I think I've made my ask pretty clear and I'm going to stick to it. So yes, because we don't want to stop. Security is job zero, right? We all know that, but not having a clear plan just puts the board in the position where we feel like, we're approving things without really having a view of the roadmap or a strategy in terms of how are you planning on spending, especially when it has gone from like a significant increase if you go back to 2018, even to 2022 to 2025. So just reiterating the ask and making sure that you come back with a plan before we approve anything further.
So then I seem like I need to, so are you saying yes?
Yes.
On the 8?
On this.
But are you saying yes on 7 and maybe 1 is a no?
That's what it sounds.
That's what it sounds like. So it sounds like 8 yes on 7, safety no, or 8 yes, what would an asterisk?
On all of it, because I don't want to hold up the safety, because this is to get us to a point where we can bid.
Gotcha.
We don't want to hold up, but I just want to make it clear that we cannot continue on approving, like you said, there's a plan without having a very specific strategy on here's exactly how we are going to spend. This is the benefit I'm seeing. These are the changes, and here are the additional things that might be in progress. But I think that list needs to be very crisp and summarized in a way that it's easy for folks that are not security experts to understand.
Okay. You're saying yes today?
Yes today.
The change order.
Yes.
But before we bring the permanent contract for the K-9s, you want to see a holistic plan of everything we plan to do from a security.
Not just for the K-9, but anything related to security on budget, even for 2025. I know we have a date coming up in November. So we need to see the holistic view of what you're asking for 2025 as a budget.
Yeah.
Needs to have proper justification of why and how you're going to spend it and what are the benefits we're getting that we already don't have from this year and last year.
Yes. Yes. No, I understand.
Thank you.
Director Cueto.
Similar to Director Ja, is a yes. And also I trust that the team has heard us loud and clear today, and we have not organized, by the way.
Pretty loud and clear. I got it.
And when I encourage you all to take advantage of this moment is because we have a budget coming up, right? So what best moment now that to think about what resources do we need to orchestrate and how much and how different from last year, so we can start 2025 on a reset mode. And also an encouragement that it is important that we break silos within the agency. It shouldn't be all on your shoulders. We have great colleagues around the organization. We just heard from the innovation folks who I would love to be more engaged in innovative ways to deal with security, et cetera. And super important, outside partners who have been knocking at our door saying, hey, can we help? Let us show you, let us tell you what happens in our neighborhood, have some ideas, and are that type of community approach that I feel is being lacking. And as I mentioned before, I think our colleagues here who are pastors understand this very well. Their communities have, yes, their communities know better than anyone else who's doing what, when, at what time, and they've been missing. So it's an ask for a plan that is not just you all internally trying to figure out how to do this with the security team. It's within the agency and with some of those key partners, again, that have been reaching out with solutions for a while. So that's my addition to the yes vote.
Director Ortiz.
Same, exactly. Plus, to the point, if we can make sure that in that process, in that task force, in that idea space, staff is also included. I very much second that they're there, eyes and ears on the ground, including them in that process, I think will be incredibly helpful. So yes, and if we're not counting it a contingency, the stipulations stated previously. Thank you.
Chairman Barkley.
Yes, but also I adopt my colleague's position too.
Director Jakes.
Yes, on the 7. I'm concerned about their safety. And the only reason I'm concerned about their safety is because I keep hearing a lot of complaints about Monterey. A lot of complaints about it. And I'm concerned that there's going to be an opportunity to give them another contract and they're not living up to their expectations.
And that's why we're going to go through a competitive process.
Okay.
And we are auditing both contractors. And when we see situations where a guard doesn't behave, we are requesting that those guards be pulled from our property. So we have had both companies remove a significant number of guards based on feedback from employees or that the analysts have viewed on camera.
And when is their contract? When does it expire?
So ACE is through April of 25. We're going to go through a process because it takes a while to do a new procurement. So I would anticipate trying to get something on the street in the next month or two, hopefully the next month. And then it's whatever process it takes for purchasing to go through its process.
All right. So then my vote will be an 8 also. That's the one thing.
Director Lee.
Agree with everything. So yes, and looking forward to a plan.
Director Eady.
Yes, with stipulations. Yeah.
General Counsel, can we have a yes with stipulation vote on our contracts?
I would say the motion passes, but the message is clear.
Yeah, and just to recognize all the conversation here on behalf of President Carter, I think you saw a robust discussion in our lead up to this contract change order where we are aiming to present a very multi-layered dynamic approach to this issue. The police have its operation. But we hear you. We hear that you want to hear how these programs are doing and receive metrics on those. I know we provided some in the lead up to this discussion, but we absolutely will continue that and present that to you as requested.
Since there's no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yeah.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved to adjourn the October 9th meeting of Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee of the CTA Board. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja? Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes.
We'll take a 5-minute break before we begin the general.
and the words as you're giving your report. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So sorry. You want me to,
So you can keep going from where you just left off.
thank you. So, sorry, I'm also losing my voice. We had the public comment, which standards it follows related to elevator design and whether those current designs follow best practices. We then had 3 presentations discussing infrastructure improvements on the CTA, which were an update to the All Stations Accessibility Program, Red Line Extension, RLE, and future phases of the Red Purple Modernization Project. Bill Mooney, Chief Infrastructure Officer, presented on ASAP and RLE. During his presentations, the committee brought up concerns regarding the decision of having one escalator that goes only one direction, particularly in areas with wide staircases. Mr. Mooney stated it is due to budget and area constraints, as some stations can only fit one escalator. The committee also brought up the cost difference between outsourcing versus in-house workers for various infrastructure projects and whether there are times where in-house would save money long-term. Mr. Mooney said that it depends on the project. Some engineering is internal, but something like elevator replacement, CTA currently outsources, and that works well. However, that there were some kinds of elevator repairs that the agency handles in-house. In addition, the committee stated that accessing the surrounding area to the stations is just as important. The committee asked whether the pathway to the station would also be improved. As the board may recall, pathway of travel is of particular concern for this committee. Mr. Mooney stated that CTA collaborates with CDOT, and it is a part of ASAP to quickly look at the surrounding area for accessibility updates. For the Red Line Extension, the committee asked whether CTA had plans to increase bus service for the areas that the extension will be targeting ahead of when the station should be built. Whether there were environment concerns with noise levels of the Red Line Extension stations, and asked if CTA will help advocate for accessible housing and developments around these new accessible Red Line Extension stations, as this is something the CTA desperately lacks, and as promoting the need in general for developments around the stations is something the CTA is doing. Christina Bather, the project manager in strategic planning, presented the future phases of the Red Purple Modernization Project. The committee expressed gratitude of RPM's public engagement efforts and expressed a desire to have more projects have the same level of public engagement. I genuinely think this would benefit everyone. There are a number of people who effectively present to a committee of mostly non-transportation professionals and explain why various decisions related to accessibility are made. That is something for the CTA to take advantage of. The committee asked to prioritize accessibility at the Central Purple Line station because there's a hospital within close proximity to the station. Furthermore, Irma Gomez, ADA manager, will be recruiting new ADA advisory committee members, as 2 of our longstanding members, Doreen Bogus and Mary Abramson, will complete a 4-year term in January. The application can be found online. The deadline is November 8th. In addition, the committee was made aware that today, MOPD will be hosting an employment networking event for people with disabilities in which the CTA will be present. The event will take place at MOPD's Central West Community Center, located at 2102 West Ogden, from 1:30 to 4. I appreciate that the CTA is doing this and encourage other agencies to also seek out disabled employees. In a tight labor market, this is a labor pool getting overlooked. Additionally, we raised the issue of BRT, a continuation of our last presentation to this board, which we appreciated the response to. This is also due to a conversation I had with Rep. Avedina Delgado at another time, in which she expressed a willingness to press the state or IDA. This is in response to a conversation I had with Rep. Delgado, in which she expressed a willingness to press the state or IDOT specifically on the request that. Molly Poppy said plans are in the works to explore this beyond the Better Streets for Buses project and Western specifically. I think we should take advantage of state legislators. Infrastructure cannot solve all disability concerns, though we sincerely appreciate the job at a recent meeting that Access Living held on implementing. I encourage it to further progress on plans for career CS consistently have more complaints, as that would point to a more systemic.
Absolutely, Director Shaw.
Are there any immediate action items that the CTA team, based off of what we've heard,
Like specifically, like related to what I just talked
There
about?
are any projects that they can take on that was not in the plan, in budget ask, that is going to happen in November? Answer to that.
We'll be happy to provide that information.
Awesome, thank you.
Issues, also curious as to whenever we run very expensive work and we need to figure out a way, thought about identifying some of the, topics that addressing those issues that affect, as you have valued tremendously from those collaborations between CDOT and city.
So there in need bus stops in regards to sidewalk for the RPM project, but is it the area that doesn't already have accessibility? I mean, we can prioritize if CTA could help with getting a commitment from CDOT that if that work is done.
I acknowledge there are many factors. So I was curious as to whether the committee, but to me will be helpful also. I've seen really great, by the way, examples of improvements in work equitably. And it feels like one-offs that happen when there is build on those lessons learned. And congrats to those folks who have an area that looks at, just curious as to whether you'll have started a conversation on that.
I think it would be a good, but we've had those discussions in terms of prioritizing, like whether or not you can Cermak, they've fixed all the sidewalks east of it, but not west. Discussions, having like a full discussion from the committee would be good. And we meet quarterly, so the next one, evaluation in terms of like ASAP, in the same ways that ASAP was considered.
Accessible stations, and I applaud the efforts of the infrastructure team to do this. Stations, so anyway.
The other thing I think that it would be worth thinking about is there are still parts of the city that don't have, this is what other agencies can do, but they can help push for that sometimes, but I think that would be also maybe worth
a partnership, which I know it's in the works to have something more coordinated, like pipelines and projects, things like that.
It can be an issue. So leaning on the partners, I think would be a really good ask of just how do or the investments, and I would further that into like a return on investment analysis, right? If you're investing in this route, or if you're investing in this other piece, how much better can an investment on buses might have a better return versus one station and one location and all of the logistics that go into building permits and costs. So I would just encourage and provide that as another piece of support coordination to think through this.
Yeah, I agree. It's very important. There's some folks that do research on that. But on the disability side, I'm aware. But yeah, I think that would be a necessary part of the conversation. Appreciate you flagging that.
Director Jakes?
No questions.
Director Lee?
Hi, Laura. Thanks for the report and the summary. I guess I'm wondering, this is maybe a question for Nora. Can we hold a spot for CDOT at their committee, like an invitation? So it just sounds like there's just a lot of, disconnect.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything precluding that. You mean just having them visit to speak?
Just like a standing invitation where they should probably show up. Is there that possibility?
I'm sure that's a possibility.
I think that would be, I would encourage that. It sounds like there's just a lot of overlap. Just keeps getting brought up. Not really solved. Otherwise, I commend the work that y'all are doing, so keep it up.
Director Eady?
No question.
Thank you, Ms. Saul.
Our next order of business is public comment. Georgette?
Chairman Barclay, we had 5 registered citizens for public comments today. 4 have actually shown up, and we will call them in order. Thank you for coming to make public comments. I would advise that your comments must be kept at 3 minutes. And we will advise you if you are going over or approaching that 3-minute mark. Our first public commentator is Penny McCoach. Welcome. Please speak loudly, pull the microphone up.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
This is agent for ATU Local 308, and I represent the rail side of the employees for the Chicago Transit Authority. I'm here today on behalf of the members of ATU Local 308, the hardworking people who operate CTA rail system 365 days a year. Unlike the transit system in many major cities who have dedicated transit police, the CTA system is patrolled by unarmed private security companies. As recent events show, that is not an effective deterrent to crime on the CTA. In just the last few weeks, our members have endured a series of violent incidents. 4 passengers shot on the Blue Line. One of our local 308 members shot and wounded in a drive-by shooting at the Howard Station. And just this past week, a customer was shot on the Red Line. And not to mention, I think just this week, there was an incident with a shooting on the buses where a passenger was shot in the leg. And these are just the latest incidents that has occurred on the system. These things are unacceptable. CTA must take steps to provide meaningful deterrence to crime on the system, such as working with the city to institute a dedicated transit police force. I heard you guys speaking about that today. I appreciate you bringing that into conversation today. CTA must also take meaningful steps to improve the quality of life for our members. Because not only do our members face they also face unacceptable working conditions. CTA often say that it places their highest priority on providing a safe and healthy environment for the employees and direction, not words from CTA. And it's time for CTA to take. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McCoach.
Yes.
Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce.
President and staff for giving me the opportunity to represent our constituents in Rogers Park and City of Chicago. We met with Infrastructure Officer Bill Mooney and RPM Jeff Wilson on several occasions about 2 different things. One is filling the empty storefronts at the CTA properties over in the Rogers Park area and also on Howard Street, the Evanston side. There are about 13 to 15 different empty storefronts there. And like, as was mentioned before, there's a lot of violence going on Morris and Howard right now. And we feel that filling these empty storefronts will really help on that end. Having more people there to actually do business and to shop would really help our community. And this is what our constituents really want and need. And that's why we had that meeting. Also, another meeting. We also got to tour the storefronts, and our action plan is to contact business owners throughout the city of Chicago and suburbs to become new Rogers Park business owners at these locations. We understand that they're in poor shape and that they need a lot of renovation. We took a look in there, but we're working with Bill Mooney and Jeff Wilson on that, and that's where we're at with that. Next, I stated it before, we will always advocate for making Morse and Jarvis red line stations ADA accessible. I'd be happy to meet with the ADA committee. I haven't yet, but now that I know, and also to advocate for families with strollers, because that's just dangerous. One of our constituents who is present in the council chambers right now is Adam Mack. While I have a little bit of time left, there are people who are treating the CTA trains, particularly the red and blue line, as their domicile. I don't believe I've seen in the CTA mission statement that you guys supply housing. I would like to see the CTA, and maybe you already have, but I'd like to see the CTA work with the homeless shelters within the city of Chicago and surrounding suburbs including connections to the homeless and others to get these people temporary housing so they don't have to be on the train.
That's time.
We have that option. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public commentator is Keith Keisel. Mr.
Okay, my name is Keith Kaiser, retired bus operator, and I know they mentioned earlier that the bus stops get bus trackers, which later came in 2011 after I saw it in London. Cars went down, so I just want to say a few things. Some things have already been said already, but the red line, I should have to get a contact high every time I get on the red line. And there was always somebody smoking weed, somebody selling weed going through the cars like it's nothing, like it's like a regular business without any kind of fear. Now, when I used to be in high school as a bad kid, we always feared doing anything on the trains. But now they out there with no fear. I suggested before this board for years, after attending the convention in St. Louis and riding their transportation, they had an armed security guard on every train that went into the city. Not security guards that couldn't do nothing without being armed, but they had armed security. We need armed security on these trains, and they had it on every train that I rode into St. Louis. Also, shields. I was the one that suggested putting the shields on the buses, but they need to protect the bus driver totally, like they do in South Africa and London, totally in case with buses with a side door that the operators can use. Also, turnstiles. I'm been telling from operators are telling me don't come back, that the people are just riding on the buses, not paying, groups of teens taking over the trains, taking over because you cannot put them off and not paying their bus fare anymore. And from what I've been told, but in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, I think I brought this up before in 2016, they have turnstiles. You're not going to get on the bus for free because you got to get past their turnstile. In Rio de Janeiro, they might want to look at that. Two more things. Two-sided bus stops at 4-way intersection. If I'm catching the bus, I shouldn't have to wait till the bus makes the far side stop just to walk 4 lanes back, catch another bus. There should be a bus stop on both sides, such as Garfield and Ashland. Also for the newcomers, one of my parents lost and cannot use communications. Please allow the operators to be able to use their Google Translate they chose to without worried about getting fired for putting out a cell phone in case they need somebody to talk to. And the last thing, I know they got the special part-timers, but special part-timers have to work on Sundays. Some of us will come back if we have to work on Sundays, so something you might want to bring in as well. And that's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
And our last public comment is from Keith Hill from Union 241.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Keith Hill. I actually want to thank you for the opportunity to give public comments, but I'm looking for engagement. So I hope after my comment that I will have the opportunity to meet with the board and express the concerns of my members, the safety and overall job. This is an olive branch. My name is Keith Hill. I am president of ATU Local 241. More than being the president of Local 241, I have been employed for the CTA for the past 27 years, working out as a driver out of Chicago, Forest Glen, North Park, Archer, and 74th Street Garage. Moreover, CTA has not just been an employer, providing me a job, but it's been an integral part of my upbringing. The culture with my mother, I've worked in CTA for 32 years, and me having aunties, uncles, and cousins work at the CTA. When I retire, I will be the 27th member of my family to retire from CTA. I grew up at the dinner table hearing about transit issues and the importance of transit in my community. Also, that working for CTA was more than a job, but it was a profession that provided necessary services to the community as important as any profession. It was also mentioned that without effective mass transit system, people in the community would suffer because and be unable to provide for their daily needs. The majority of the people living in the city are entirely dependent upon the system to get to work, as well as to get to shopping and hospitals and other areas, as it's their only means of transportation. I grew up hearing that people who work for the system are responsible for making this a first-class transit system, as it is the employees who interact with the everyday riding public. It's from this perspective I'm addressing you today. Today's system is facing a huge problem. Not are there only funding problems, but there are everyday operational issues and a huge issue affecting my members, your employees, who are faced with rising violence directed towards them each and every day. And I am advised by my members that someone with a gun approaches them on a bus on a regular, each and every day. I learned of an incident or accident committed by an employee who should have been trained properly to avoid the issue, but was not. We have more and more people who are new to the city of Chicago, expect and demand a free ride on the transit system, then starting confrontations on the system. Yet, as a recurrent, these issues are, and as much as they are directed to management, if they are not considered important by the individual manager, they are ignored. I have attempted to take the interests of my members are tied to the success of much of management have taken that they run the world, that they are untouchable and they are protected no matter how they act. That's their solution. Their decisions and their approaches are only the correct ones, while ignoring any suggestions who deal with the issues on a daily basis. I have worked and operated a bus for decades. I have instructed employees for decades, and I know the right approach to train and how to avoid and address issues, concerns of the public. The fact that incidents keep growing, new employees going through the system keep making the same mistakes which the past employees did not make. The fact the passenger dissatisfaction is growing. The fact the violence on the system against operators keep growing. And most importantly, some of the most significant issues my members or your employees face has not been addressed. This shows that this is a one-way street approach is not working. When incidents occur, there are training deficiencies which are obviously or were there complaints from passengers is no longer the answers. Why do new employees not stay? Why do new employees have more accidents and not follow basic protocols in driving a bus? What are the problems in instructions? How to improve the customer employee satisfaction? These are issues that can be resolved, but it takes a two-way street. The union is already committed to management to help address the funding problem. But even finding solutions of the problems does not address some of the most significant underlying issues that must be cured to make CTA a world-class transportation system. It has the potential to be. It is no longer time for lip service. It's time for actions. In the mind, we are at a critical junction. We can either approach these problems as partners or as adversaries. And to simply say, it is not the fault of the employee. The underlying cause must be examined. Unless the approach changes, the problems will not be resolved. The only way to address current issues is to develop a partnership with the union to address these issues, which in my mind mean that management should recognize that management does not have all the solutions and it's not always the fault of the employees. It is time for management to recognize those who interact on a daily basis with the public, drive and maintain these buses, teach new employees, coach current employees, and those who keep the system moving care about their jobs and have answers to solutions. Many of the problems of the system faces should be listened to. Their input is important. The union prefers a partnership. It is not the question whether the person at the top or are at the same page, but whether it is understood at all levels that not one person at whatever level of management believes that they are immune. It is time for the board to recognize that directing a partnership be forged. It is important issues.
Mr. Hill, could you please begin wrapping up your comments? Thank you.
Thank you, I will. As they ensure that CTA achieves of what it is capable of, it is time for the board to issue a directive so no one at any level of management believe that they are exempt. Only in this way are the issues, concerns to the union and CTA will be truly addressed. Action is required and needed to support the board. The issues that are important, and we must find solutions together, or there will not be solutions, and the transit system that we represent will continue to burn and crumble. I'm asking the board to have a meeting with the union, and let's see if we can help get us back on track. Before I leave, Director Lee, on behalf of my members, I understand that you take the bus on a regular. I understand that you have been left numerous of times. That is a direct conversation of what I'm talking about. The training, the attitude has to change. But when I go to make these suggestions, it falls on deaf ears and nothing gets done. Or retaliation goes back on the union. So I'm asking everyone, come join us, come partner with us, take the system. The safety you heard today is a joke, is a joke. There is no safety for us. And I'm disappointed that all I heard was the rails. Because for the last 50 years of my data, it's the buses that kept this system running. During COVID, it was the buses that kept this system running.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Don't disrespect the buses. Acknowledge us, pay attention, come talk to us.
Thank you.
Still.
One, it was a great meeting you last month. Question, do you have the list of everything you talked about? Do you have a list of, is there any way you can get that to the board office so that we can have a copy of it?
It would be honored.
And if we can start there as well as Mr. Coach, right? Same thing. I want to be able to lay eyes on it.
It would be an honor and a pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you to public comment. Thank you very much. Our next item of business on the agenda is our president's report. As you know, President Carter is ill under the weather today. And so Chief of Staff Nora Learson is sitting in for him. Thank you, Nora, to give us a report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are excited to announce the launch of the planning process for CTA's first ever agency-wide strategic plan. This initiative is entitled Powering Our Transit Future, and it will provide CTA with a detailed vision and roadmap towards establishing the world-class transit system our customers deserve. Our planning process, which will be guided by community and rider input, has three central goals. First, we want to develop a coordinated, proactive framework for decision-making, policy development, and strategic investments. Second, we want to articulate a clear, direct vision for our riders, employees, elected officials, and other stakeholders on future investments and objectives for transit in the region. And finally, we want to establish specific outcomes and metrics for progress, guided by principles of equity, sustainability, accessibility, and rider and employee experience. But we don't do this alone. The most critical component of this process will be the input and feedback from the communities we serve, the customers who ride our system, and other stakeholders from across the city who want to engage with us and provide their thoughts regarding CTA's operational and funding priorities. You may wonder why CTA is developing this type of plan at this moment. President Carter believes that as we drive progress on CTA's immediate priorities for frequent, reliable, and safe transit services, we must also lay the groundwork for the agency's long-term future. To fulfill our commitment to this great city, CTA must remain a customer-focused organization, an agency that works closely with the community, and an employer that makes investments in its workers. We are excited to collaborate with all of our stakeholders to create a comprehensive, equitable plan to provide world-class transit service for all Chicagoans. And I apologize for my voice, but you do see that our strategic plan is aimed at much of the spirit that was discussed today in terms of input across the board in these issues. Lastly, President Carter also asked that I provide a brief note about CTA's fiscal year 2025 proposed budget recommendation, which will be unveiled for your consideration this Friday. While the proposed budget specifics will be made public at that time, he has asked me to advise the board that it is a balanced spending plan that puts our customers, improved service, and transit equity first. Notably, this budget will maintain fares and enhance service. Each new budget year warrants a look back at the year that has passed, and we are very proud of CTA's performance in 2024. Of particular note is that CTA is already either approaching, meeting, or in some cases exceeding 2019 levels across key metrics, including workforce and service performance. This summer, the number of full-time CTA bus operators employed by CTA reached 2019 levels, and today it exceeds that level. That has allowed us to again put the kind of bus service our customers deserve first. In addition, we are making great strides toward President Carter's promised goal of training 200 new rail operators this year, which will ensure that we return to 2019 service levels for rail as well. Chief among the proposed 2025 budget priorities is an increased investment that will help us provide service levels that exceed pre-pandemic levels. This will be made possible primarily through the system investments outlined in our bus vision plan, which is helping us to reimagine our bus network. We are also focused on making investments that will provide a clean and welcoming environment throughout our system. To achieve that goal, the budget will provide the funding necessary to retain additional workers hired this year to help clean our buses, drains, and facilities. As always, the safety and security of our customers and employees is our primary concern, and this proposed budget allocates significant funding for those efforts. Of course, our greatest resources are the hardworking men and women of the CTA. And in 2025, we will continue to invest in them. In the coming year, we will provide additional training resources for our employees, along with expanded investment in employee engagement and facilities. We look forward to introducing the proposed 2025 budget on Friday and look forward to your thoughts and feedback. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Larson. I want to commend President Carter. Last month, I attended the City Club address where he laid out strategy for CTA becoming a world-class transit system, and where he challenged many of the business and political elected officials as to how we get this done to address some of the inequities in funding our system here at CTA and in the region as well, and how it disproportionately impacts certain customers in certain areas who deserve and need public transportation. I fully support this effort in bringing attention to this issue and encourage my board colleagues to do the same. It's essential that we continue to advocate for fair and equitable funding that allows for us to meet the growing demands of our service and deliver on our commitments to the communities that we represent. I'd like to also thank strategic plan team, Molly's team, for informing the board and briefing the board members on the strategic plan and seeking input from all of us on the board as well. And I'm encouraged by the thoughtfulness and the effort that has gone into this process so far, and hoping that staff and board members will continue to collaborate on how to take the next steps for moving CTA forward today and in the future. Regarding the upcoming budget proposal, the board received a preview of the proposed budget in briefings, and I appreciate the detailed work that is tied to that process as well. We must continue to show our stakeholders, partners, and customers that we're making strategic decisions with their needs in mind and exploring every avenue to enhance the experience of our customers. It is crucial that the budget reflect our commitment to innovation. I'm pleased to see that we're using it not only to address immediate needs, but also to explore new and creative solutions to problems that we have, as well, like security issues that has come up this morning and that is of great concern to this board. So at this point, I'd like to open the floor up to any other board members who might want to respond to President Carter's report.
Okay, we'll take responses from board members. Director Ja.
Thank you for the report.
Director Requejo.
Just wanted to start by thanking you, Nora, for the preview of the strategic plan and the budget. I was very surprised when I joined CTA to hear that we had never done a strategic plan as a planner. It was pretty shocking. An agency of this size and with this trajectory had never done something like that. And after the surprise, I thought, well, let's take the opportunity to make this really significant and set an example of what a plan should be. I aligned with President Carter in wanting to make CTA a world-class agency. And I know that for us to be a world-class agency, we're going to need a world-class strategic plan. And so we should be looking at what other agencies are doing in that front. We should not be repeating, rehashing. And the most important thing, it cannot be internally driven. It has to be an open plan. I was encouraged today, although there was a lot of conversation and conflict and grievances, but I was encouraged to see that everyone who came here with a grievance and an issue and a problem came also with an olive branch, with an offer to help. People are eager to work with CTA in solving these problems. And so I've been pleasantly surprised throughout my tenure here as to how responsive you all are. One thing that I've noticed is that you are not great at asking for help. So I encourage you all to ask for help because those folks are banging the doors and they have great ideas and solutions. They have resources and you don't have to do this on your own. And then as the chair was mentioning, there's a number of issues that have come up today that are really important. From my perspective, definitely security and having a security plan that is comprehensive, open, multi-layer is really important. The other two things that I would love to see through the budget process to demonstrate that we are reallocating resources is one, customer experience and engagement. I feel many times we have a one-way street communication with passengers that we don't kind of hear from them or engage them in decision-making solutions. And the other thing and came up today too is we have a great opportunity to set up resources to better staff equitable transit-oriented development. I think it should be proud of some examples that have taken place around town on building near transit, affordable housing, community centers, health clinics. I don't think we're staffed yet and resourced yet to the point that we can tackle a full agenda of how do we make our transit equitable as it relates to development nearby. So those three things I would encourage you all to consider and make prominent in the budget. Again, security, ETOD, and customer experience and engagement.
Director Ortiz.
Yes, thank you. I mentioned earlier that I have been and always have been excited about the strategic plan. I've offered support, I've offered time, and I also don't like surprises. And so often I am surprised with, hey, this is everything that we've been working on and here's the period on it because we're done with it. And I think there's a lot of support available. There's a lot of different perspectives. There's a lot of great resources. And specific on the strategic plan, I feel like there's a lot more that can be done and being inclusive and being thoughtful. I honestly, I feel like there's been minimal briefings on that and not just briefings, but involvement of that work. I feel often like we're just told again, this is what it is. And so I really want to encourage specifically to the strategic plan that it be fully vetted, thought out with different voices at the table to be really, as we've talked about, a world-class approach plan and overall implementation plan to doing that work. So I just wanted to note that and really encourage a more thorough assessment process and inclusivity specific to that, because it's so important. The last, not as high, but definitely high, is communications. Not just with the writers, but across our agency. We've talked about just being able to connect directly with our staff and not just putting stuff at state, at the locations where they're at. And I've heard we just post things and people, that's how we know, or that's how people know. I understand there's under innovation, I think, ways that we're wanting to connect. And I really want to emphasize that we're looking at two-way communications, again, across our customers, but also across our staff. So I just want to highlight those two pieces and hope that we can continue to work through that together.
Absolutely. And we appreciate that feedback. I think a fundamental component of the strategic plan is to have that input and to make people feel that they are a part of its formation. So we'll continue to keep that aim and hear you on that feedback so far.
Thank you.
Director Jakes? Director Lee?
Just echoing the sentiment of collaborative efforts and offer my support. Thanks, Nora.
Director Eady?
Yes, I would concur with what I've heard already and just want to frame it this way, that certainly there needs to be possibly some sort of a forum or a town hall or something to be conceived to receive that kind of community input. The optics of it is also very good as well, to even know that CTA is interested to hear from the broader community. And I think for me, one of the persons that came forward, Mr. Morton from Rogers Park, with the fact that the CTA trains often are sources for those who are homeless. I do think that that needs to be taken in as a part of the strategic plan of what can CTA do to address that, to collaborate in some way, because we know that the trains are often that resource for that population. Well, let's try to aid and address that problem. And so I think that that was a legitimate concern for me as I heard it, and I would certainly suggest that that be incorporated into a plan.
Certainly, and with regards to that comment, we can always provide you more information, partnerships with agencies, and with the exact aim of housing as many people as possible off of the CTA and providing them services. So that is in place, always a fundamental to look to grow and understand more of the opportunity there. That's been a longstanding partnership with those agencies.
But just accept the fact that I'm getting up to speed.
Absolutely.
Some things. Yeah. That just struck me in that way, but I'm glad to know that something is already in place.
Thank you. Thank you, Nora. Okay, hope Nora feels better. Our next item on the agenda is number 6, executive session. Get Ray, our General Counsel, the executive session today, sir.
Yes, Chairman, we will have an executive session invoking the Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 2C, subsections 1.
I will now entertain a motion to recess into executive session, reasons stated by counsel.
So moved. Second. It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the board will move into executive session. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Yes. Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee? Yes. Director Eady?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Entertain a motion to return to open session.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the Transit Board return to open session. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee? Yes. Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Yes. Director Requayo?
Yes.
Director Shaw?
Yes.
The motion passes.
We will now address board agenda item 6A. Kent?
In item 6A, Chairman, the board reviewed the closed session meeting minutes for September 11, 2024.
May I have a motion to approve the closed session minutes for September 11, 2024.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the board approve the closed session minutes from September 11, 2024. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee? Abstain. Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Yes. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Shaw?
Yes.
The motion passes.
With respect to board agenda item 6E, the board reviewed the recommendation to adopt an ordinance authorizing execution of collective bargaining agreements. Let me rephrase that. The board considered a recommendation to authorize execution of collective bargaining agreements containing the terms of tentative agreements with the Craft Coalition of Trade Unions.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt an ordinance authorizing execution of collective bargaining agreements containing terms of tentative agreements with the Craft Coalition of Trade?
So moved.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the board adopt the ordinance authorizing the execution of collective bargaining agreements containing terms of a tentative agreement with the Craft Coalition of Trade Unions. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee? Yes. Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ja? The motion passes.
We will now address agenda item 6C.
Chairman, in connection with board agenda item 6C, the board reviewed the recommendation to adopt an ordinance authorizing execution of a collective bargaining agreement containing the terms of a tentative agreement with the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 399.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt an ordinance authorizing execution of a collective bargaining agreement containing the terms of a tentative agreement, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 399.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the board adopt an ordinance authorizing the execution of a collective bargaining agreement containing the terms of a tentative agreement with the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 399. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Kent, may I have a motion to,
In connection with item 6D, Chairman, the board reviewed the recommended findings and decision of the hearing committee appointed in connection with a review of the discharge of CTA employee Michael Hupp under Section 8 of the Metropolitan Transit Authority Act.
thank you, Kent. May I have a motion to sustain the discharge of Michael Hupp?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the board sustain the discharge of Michael Hupp. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Just to clarify, we're sustaining, meaning upholding the findings of the panel?
Upholding the discharge.
Okay, so yes.
Director Jakes?
No.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Requejo? Director Ja?
No.
The motion passes with 4 voting to sustain the discharge and 3 voting in opposition of sustaining.
We will now address board agenda item 7, board matters. Georgette, do we have any board matters?
Chairman Barclay, we do have 1 board matter, and that is a resolution of appreciation for the dedicated employees of the Chicago Transit Authority for their efforts during the 2024 Democratic National Convention. I'll read the resolution. whereas the Democratic National Convention, the formal nominating event for the presidential candidate of the Democratic Party, was hosted in the city of Chicago, August 19th through the 22nd, 2024. And whereas approximately 50,000 visitors comprised of dignitaries, national delegates, convention attendees, and tourists traveled to Chicago to attend the DNC. And whereas the DNC was a complete success for the city of Chicago and highlighted its many attributes. And whereas the Chicago Transit Authority played a key role in supporting the city during the DNC, providing transportation services that contributed to the success of the event. And whereas the employees of the Chicago Transit Authority demonstrated exceptional dedication, commitment, and professionalism in providing dedicated bus shuttle transportation to dignitaries and national delegates, while still delivering regular transit service to event attendees, visitors, and everyday commuters during the week of the event. And whereas, in addition to transportation services, employees from departments across the agency volunteered to serve as information specialists, greeting and providing assistance to visitors using CTA during the DNC. And whereas the complex logistical transportation demands during the DNC were successfully met through the collective efforts of CTA employees, ensuring smooth operations and minimizing disruptions to regular service. And whereas the contributions of these employees reflect positively on the CTA and its longstanding expertise in delivering transit service for special events, enhancing the reputation of the company and the city as an outstanding host for major national events. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Chicago Transit Board hereby acknowledges and commends CTA employees from all departments for their hard work, dedication, and the successful execution of their responsibilities during the Democratic National Convention. Be it further resolved that the board extends its deepest appreciation for the employees' efforts in maintaining high-quality service and contributing significantly to the overall success of this historic event.
Thank you, Georgette. Before we place the motion on the floor for a vote, Mr. Bonds is here in the audience, and I just want to thank you on behalf of the board to your crew for doing a splendid job for the DNC and making us all look good, and the city as well. Sentiments along with this resolution as our sincere appreciation for their efforts. I have a motion to adopt the resolution of appreciation for the dedicated employees of the Chicago Transit Authority for their efforts during the 2024 Democratic National Convention.
So moved. Second. It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the resolution be adopted. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja? Yes. Director Recrejo? Yes. Director Ortiz? Yes. Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee? Yes. Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion to adopt the resolution passes.
Our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit and Budget. Director Jakes.
Mr. Chairman, the committee met earlier this morning and approved the September 11, 2024 committee minutes and reviewed the finance report. Committee reviewed 6 ordinances. Review of an ordinance authorizing the use of capital revenue funds to meet the Chicago Transit Authority's local share commitment for the Red Line Extension Project in fiscal years 2030 and 31. Review of an ordinance authorizing a second amendment of a lease of property located at 350 North Orleans Street, Chicago. Number 3, review of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation and the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for planning for the I-290 Blue Line Corridor project. 4, review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of blanket railroad protective liability insurance for policy year November 1st, 2024 through October 31st, 2025. Number 5, review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of cybersecurity insurance coverage for policy year November 1st, 2024 through October 31st, 2025. Review of an ordinance authorizing pilot program agreements with Global Display Solutions, Inc. and Papercast North America for digital bus stop sign pilots under the CTA's Innovation Studio program. Committee also reviewed 8 contracts. Committee placed the 6 ordinances and 8 of the contracts on the omnibus. Committee approved and recommended for board approval 6 ordinances and 8 contracts. This concludes the report of the Finance, Audit, and Budget.
Thank you, Director Jakes. I will now entertain a motion to approve the omnibus.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz to approve the omnibus. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our apologies to the construction report, Mr. Mooney and Mr. Vieto, because we're running such short on time, we're going to ask to defer that until next month. They require a motion, Georgia.
Okay, we have a motion to amend the agenda to defer the construction report to the November board meeting.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the construction report be deferred to the November board meeting. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Ja? The motion passes.
Our final order of business is new business. Georgia, is there any new business?
Chairman Barclay, there is no new business.
Since there's no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn the Chicago Transit Board meeting, October 9th, 2024.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the meeting be adjourned. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Requejo? Director Ja? The motion passes.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
This was a great evening. Absolutely great.